The LA Kings look to build off their big win over the Edmonton Oilers as they start a 4-game road trip in Buffalo. We'll talk about that and the return of Viktor Arvidsson on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love for you to leave us a positive comment on Apple Podcasts if you're a fan of the show. And we are on YouTube. Please like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, 20 plus years at the Fox Sports Radio Network. I'm also co-host of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the past 17 years, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Well, the LA Kings are back in action after that big win over the Oilers on Saturday, looking to carry some momentum from that game for the start of their 4-game road trip, which begins in Buffalo tonight. A little bit of a tale of the tape between these two teams as the LA Kings come into this game with an overall record of 24-15-10. That's good enough for 4th place in the Pacific Division, 7th place in the Western Conference, and 15th in the NHL with a total of 58 points. Kings are 15-6-4 on the road, still one of the best road teams in the NHL, coming off that 4-0 shutout win over the Oilers at home. And the Kings are currently the number 1 wildcard team in the Western Conference. The Buffalo Sabres are 20-22-1, 6th place in the Atlantic Division, 14th place in the Eastern Conference, and 27th out of 32 teams in the NHL with a total of 48 points. The Sabres are 11-14-1 on home ice, and they're coming off a 3-1 loss to the Blues on Saturday. Kings are 15th in the NHL in goals scored per game, 3.16, still 5th in the NHL in goals allowed per game at 2.59. Sabres are 24th in the NHL in goals scored per game, 2.90, and 17th in the league in goals allowed per game at 3.12. LA has the 15th best power play in the NHL, operating at 21.5%, still the number 1 penalty killing unit in the NHL at 87.7%. Buffalo 29th on the power play in the NHL, 14.1%, 17th on the penalty kill at 79.6%. So special teams seem to be an advantage for the LA Kings. Individually, the Kings are led in points by Adrian Kempe. He's got 44 points on the season, 17 goals and 27 assists. Trevor Moore is the Kings' leading goal scorer with 21, but he's been a little bit cold lately, just 1 goal for the native of Thousand Oaks in the last 9 games. So hopefully we can see Trevor get on track tonight. For Buffalo, their leading points producer is Casey Middlestat. He's got 42 points, 12 goals, and 30 assists. JJ Peterka is currently their leading goal scorer with just 18. He did have 2 goals against the Kings in their last meeting in Los Angeles, which was won by the Buffalo Sabres. As for the 2 netminders in this one, it looks like it's going to be a completely different matchup than the one we saw in LA recently. The Kings are going with David Rittich. He has taken over as the number 1 goalie for the LA Kings with the struggles of Cam Talbot. Rittich, it's being called up 6-1-3, 1.90 goals against average, and a .931 save percentage. Those are outstanding numbers. And now we can also let you know he's got a shutout on his resume. His last start, of course, against the Oilers, 26 saves in that big shutout victory and made several big saves in that win as well. For Buffalo, looks like they're going to go with one of my favorite names in the NHL, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen out of Finland. He checks in with a record of 12-13-2. His goals against average is 2.60, and his save percentage is .909. He has been the goaltender for most of this season for the Sabres. Last time these two teams met, though, we didn't see him. And this is the second of two meetings between the two teams, the final meeting between the two teams. The Sabres did beat the Kings about 3 weeks ago in LA, January the 24th. 5-3 was the final. You might remember that game because the Kings jumped out to a big 3-1 lead after the first period. And then, well, they did have goals from Andrei Kopitar, Adrian Kempe, and Pierre-Luc Dubois. Then Buffalo scored 2 in the second, 2 more in the third, and skated off with the 5-3 victory. Cam Talbot was in net in that one for the Kings. He allowed 5 goals on 37 shots. Devin Levi was the starting goalie for the Sabres that night. He allowed 3 goals on 40 shots, but again, not expected to be in net for Buffalo tonight. He's their number 2 goalie. Now, the Sabres are having a disappointing season. Most people, including me, thought that this was a team on the rise, thought that they would be in the playoffs this year. That's not going to happen. And a matter of fact, they will extend their NHL record 13 consecutive seasons, missing the playoffs. It is the current longest streak of its kind of any of the 4 major North American sports teams. So it's been another disappointing season for the Sabres. They do have some talented players to contend with, veterans like Jeff Skinner. They've got Tage Thompson, the son of former King Brett Thompson, who is the most skilled big man in the league. And they do have all-star defenseman Rasmus Dahlin. As far as the Kings lineup, if you were expecting to see Viktor Arvidsson, you're going to be disappointed. It looks like Viktor Arvidsson is not going to be in the lineup tonight. Still going to talk about his imminent return coming up in a minute. But it looks like it's going to be the same lineup for the Kings as we saw against the Edmonton Oilers. And that means that Alex Turcotte will still be the 4th line center. We'll still see Alex Laferriere and Jared Anderson-Dolan on the wings with Pierre-Luc Dubois. And of course, the top 6 is still the top 6. As far as the defensive pairings, again, very familiar. Still no Brandt Clark. Jordan Spence looks to be on the third pairing on the right side with Andreas Engelland. And we talked about David Rittich in net for the LA Kings. As far as some keys to the game for the LA Kings tonight in Buffalo, I think number 1, build off the big win. Again, maybe not the best game the Kings have played all season against the Oilers, but as far as how they've played recently, when you consider the opponent, when you consider all the circumstances, huge win against Edmonton on Saturday. Great effort all the way around. Don't just let that be a one-off. Don't let that just be a good game. Make it be the starting point of something. Make it be something that you build on and go forward from here. As far as another key to the Kings for me is the positive bank account. I've talked about this. Maybe it's cheesy, but I like it. Jim Hiller says at the end of the night, you've got a bank account. Do you have more money in it or less money in it? In other words, you get money for every positive play you make. You get money taken out for every negative play you make. Make sure that as a team, you've got money in that bank account at the end of the night, that you've made more positive plays to help your team win than negative plays to help your team lose. It seems like a very basic, simple thing, but sometimes putting things in the simplest terms kind of make it easier to digest. The Kings definitely, as a team, had a positive bank account in that win over the Oilers. And finally, start strong and finish strong. Last time the Kings met this team, the Buffalo Sabres, had a great start, but couldn't sustain it the rest of the way. Buffalo took over, and that loss to the Sabres, where they blew that 3-1 first period lead, one of the more disappointing losses the Kings have had over this recent stretch of games where there's been a lot of disappointing results. Keep that in mind. Don't let this team get back in it. Don't let this team, who's hungry for wins, yes, it's a disappointing season for Buffalo, but they're also a team that, if you give them a little bit of life, if you give them some hope, they're going to feed on that like a hungry pack of dogs and try and get the win. That's what they did in LA a few weeks back. So Viktor Arvidsson isn't playing tonight, but he should be back soon. What does all that mean? Where will he be in the lineup? We're going to take a look at Viktor Arvidsson's return in the near future. That's next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA and NHL players, as well as teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. As for the LA Kings coming into tonight's game against Buffalo, they are favored by 1.5 goals. The over-under is 6.5 goals. You can certainly place a bet on our Kings getting a big win tonight. Do you think the game will be low scoring or will it be high scoring? All that with our friends over at FanDuel. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, I heard someone once say. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. And Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and you can also find it on Amazon Fire TV. It's Locked On Sports Today, here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find the Locked On Sports Today channel now on Amazon Fire TV. Well, as I mentioned, Viktor Arvidsson, it looks like he's not going to play tonight, judging by what's being reported out of Buffalo. Zach Dooley, the LA Kings insider traveling with the team, said it looked like the morning skate did not include Viktor Arvidsson. So we won't know officially until the team takes the ice, but it doesn't look like we'll have Viktor Arvidsson tonight. So it does look like he could return on Thursday in New Jersey. Now, we have not seen Viktor Arvidsson in a while. Matter of fact, April 29th, 2023, Game 6 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. He was playing on the top line, you might remember, with Anze Kopitar and Adrian Kempe in that elimination game at home against the Edmonton Oilers. Unfortunately for Arvidsson, he did take part in the team's preseason, but then right before the season was going to start, suffered a back injury in practice. It would require surgery, the second such surgery that he's had. Now, while it was the same surgery he had a couple seasons ago, they say it was in a different area of his back, so not a repeat injury to what he had before. But when he gets back for the LA Kings, obviously they're adding a skilled, creative winger that can both score and set up teammates and is going to help the team overall, regardless of where he draws in the lineup. Now, that obviously remains to be seen. I have said I would like to see him start off on the third line with Pierre-Luc Dubois. I think there's going to be the temptation of putting him back where he's familiar on that second line with Phillip Danault and Trevor Moore, and I certainly get that. I just think the combination of Kevin Fiala and Pierre-Luc Dubois, I think they're both a little bit more individual players than team players. I think Arvidsson a little bit more of a team player. I just think his addition to Pierre Dubois makes him a little bit more of a team player. I don't know. I think you got, like I said, two individuals more when you've got Fiala and Dubois together, and so they don't really mesh that well. That's my opinion. We'll see what they decide to do, but regardless of where he comes in, if he is on that second line with Dubois and Moore, if he's on the third line with Pierre-Luc Dubois, it's going to help both of those lines either way. If he's with the second line, then that slides Fiala down. And even if Fiala and Dubois don't mesh great together, you're still replacing, a Jarrett Anderson Dolan or a rookie and Alex Laferriere. That's an upgrade, regardless of how it works out. So we'll see how it works out. Maybe Jim Hiller, the new head coach for the Kings, has something even more creative in mind. We'll just have to wait and see how that works out. Now, the last time Arvidsson did have his back surgery before this one was late in the 2021-22 season. It caused him to miss the first playoff series against the Edmonton Oilers. Now, he was able to recover over the offseason. He did start the 2022-23 season with the Kings. Now, he did end up going scoreless for the first 5 games after coming back, but he finished with 2 goals and 3 assists in 9 games in the month of October. So maybe it's fair to say it might take Viktor Arvidsson a little bit of time once he gets back into game action to start to produce some numbers. We'll have to wait and see. But again, regardless of how it shakes out, he is an upgrade for the LA Kings. If you don't remember last year, 26 goals, 59 points in 77 regular season games for the LA Kings. Now, not only does Viktor Arvidsson help the Kings scoring depth, but he should be a big help on the Kings power play as well, adding that all-important right-handed shot. The Kings power play has been okay without Arvidsson, but it was really, really good a season ago with him. Arvidsson was second on the Kings in power play goals back in 2022-23 with 10, second to Adrian Kempe, and he led the team in power play assists with 15. So again, you're adding a guy that can not only set up his teammates, but also can put it in the net as well, whether it's on the power play or 5-on-5. If Arvidsson is added to the Kings' top penalty unit, which is where he was last season, it would seem likely that maybe Kevin Fiala would get bumped to the second unit, and that would probably draw rookie Alex Laferriere off that second unit. So again, a domino effect with Arvidsson in there. He'll make the number one power play unit better because of the right-handed shot, and then moving a member of the top unit down to the second unit makes that unit better as well. Now, maybe there's a chance that Jim Hiller decides to keep Fiala along with Arvidsson, and maybe they bump Quinton Byfield to that second power play unit. If that happens again, you're adding Quinton Byfield, taking out an Alex Laferriere, and that makes that second unit better as well. So again, we'll have to wait and see, just as we wait to see where Arvidsson will draw in with the forward group, 5-on-5, same thing for the power play. But regardless of where he is, it should be a very positive return for the LA Kings. Now, the less fun part of this story, the return of Viktor Arvidsson, is how it is going to affect the Kings roster with their salary cap issue. Now, Arvidsson's return would likely mean the Kings could have only one extra player on the active roster. Right now, the Kings are carrying 22 players, 13 forwards, 7 defensemen, and 2 goalies. The Kings will need to send a player down to make room for Viktor Arvidsson because of the salary cap. Now, if you're looking at who is waiver exempt, what players can the Kings send to the AHL in Ontario without them being in jeopardy of being claimed by another team? You've got Quinton Byfield, Alex Laferriere, Alex Turcotte, Brandt Clarke, and Jordan Spence. I don't see any scenario where Quinton Byfield obviously is going to get sent down. Alex Turcotte is centering that fourth line with Blake Lizotte out, and it looks like he'll be out for a while, so that doesn't seem likely. Alex Laferriere has obviously done a very, very good job. It's a possibility, but to me, the most likely player to be sent down is either Brandt Clarke or Jordan Spence, and since Clarke hasn't been in the lineup lately, he would seem to be the odd man out. So I would expect once Viktor Arvidsson returns that Brandt Clarke does return to Ontario. I've always said I'm a fan of Jordan Spence. I like what he's done this year. That having been said, I would like to see Brandt Clarke get more of a shot to show what he could do. I would have preferred that happened before now, so that when we do have to make a decision like this, we get a better idea of which is a better option for us. Jordan Spence has been reliable. He's been good, but he hasn't been outstanding. He doesn't have the creativity of a Brandt Clarke, but Clarke really hasn't been given the shot to kind of show what he can do over a stretch of, I don't know, at least like 5 games in a row. So it looks like it's Jordan Spence for now. And again, I would think that Brandt Clarke is going to be sent down to Ontario to make room for Viktor Arvidsson. Now, there are other options, but they would involve players that are not waiver exempt. Guys like Jaret Anderson-Dolan, Arthur Kaliev, Carl Grundstrom, Travis Andreas Engelland. None of those players are waiver exempt and could be claimed by another team if the Kings try and send them down to Ontario. I don't know what kind of appetite there is out there for a team to grab a guy like a Jaret Anderson-Dolan. I think it's a situation that the Kings don't want to have to be put in that situation. So again, it just makes more sense. You can send Brandt Clarke down. You don't have to expose him to waivers where you may risk losing another player. I know a lot of people aren't necessarily high on a guy like a Jaret Anderson-Dolan, but why lose a guy if you don't have to? Why not just send Brandt Clarke down? He's not playing anyway, so that would seem to make sense. It is also expected the Kings will probably put center Blake Lizotte on long-term injured reserve, and that could help with the roster shuffling a little bit. I don't know every detail and ins and outs of that, but I know that that's certainly a possibility that could help a little bit as well. And it's also possible the Kings could make a trade to free up some space. We've talked about Arthur Kaliev being a possibility. It doesn't seem like, and we don't know, but it doesn't seem like there's anything imminent as far as a trade goes. Certainly as we get closer to the trade deadline on March the 8th, that is certainly a possibility then, but it doesn't seem like that's something that's going to happen anytime soon, but it is a possibility, probably a slight possibility that something like that could happen. So there are certainly some advantages to having Viktor Arvidsson back on the ice. There are some disadvantages as far as flexibility with the roster and the number of players you're going to have available when he does return. We'll see how it all shakes out. But a lot of things are going to be moving here for the LA Kings, whether it's on the ice as far as where a Viktor Arvidsson fits in, and then somewhat off the ice with the way the roster has to be shuffled as well. Regardless, it is still a net positive for the LA Kings to get Viktor Arvidsson back on the ice here in the near future. Looks like it's going to be Thursday in New Jersey, and that will be exciting to see. We're going to let you know how the playoff picture looks now after last night's action for the LA Kings. That is next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. And we are heading into the stretch run of the NHL season, and the Kings are looking to make a playoff push. But regardless of what the Kings do the rest of the way, you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you have to do is pick whether stars like Austin Matthews or Nathan McKinnon will record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, and for goalies, saves. You got plus, minus, and more. It's not just the NHL. You can play daily fantasy sports with the NBA as well if you like that. But win 100 times your bet on Sleeper. What you need to do is correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. So you're Kings fans, nail your picks, and you could start winning big. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL, and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That code is LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availabilities. Well, the LA Kings are on the road to face the Buffalo Sabres, 4 p.m. Pacific time tonight. Check every moment of the hometown broadcast of your LA Kings with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search LA Kings. Well, let's check in on the standings in the Pacific Division and the Western Conference playoff race coming into tonight's game. Now, there were some results of note involving the Kings from last night. You had the Flames being shut out by the Rangers 2-0. That's good. You had the Kraken lose to the Devils 3-1. That's good. So both Calgary and Seattle both miss out on a chance to gain some ground on LA. As for the division, Edmonton didn't play last night, so they're still at 61 points. The Kings are still 3 points back of the Oilers for third place in the division and an automatic playoff spot. The Blues are still at 58 points, so tied with the Kings for a wild card spot, but LA has the tiebreaker, so they've got the number 1 wild card, and the Blues the number 2 wild card. Nashville has 56 points. They're still 2 points back of the Kings, but they've also played 2 more games than the Kings. Calgary has 55 points, still 3 points back of LA. They've also played more games than the Kings, 3 more games, as a matter of fact. And Seattle at 52 points. They're 4 points back of the Kings for a wild card spot. They've also played 3 more games than the Kings. Now, coming up tonight in games of interest, you've got the Blues at the Maple Leafs. Predators host the Devils, and the Oilers will host the Red Wings. And regardless of what happens tonight, LA cannot fall out of a playoff spot if the Kings lose in regulation and the Blues and the Predators both win. The worst LA would be that final wildcard team in the Western Conference. They would be tied with Nashville, but the Kings have the tiebreaker over the Predators. So again, regardless of what happens, hopefully the Kings win. But if the worst case scenario, if they lose and the Blues and the Predators both win, the Kings would still be in a wild card spot. But obviously it would be a much tighter race. So every point matters for the LA Kings. They have a very winnable game tonight in Buffalo against a lesser opponent. Kings need to bank 2 points tonight against the Sabres. Now, if the playoffs did start today, the Kings, again, would be the number 1 wildcard team. They would face the Dallas Stars in the opening round, as Dallas currently leads the Central Division. So a big game tonight for the LA Kings. They're all big the rest of the way. Keep building that momentum. Don't make that big win over the Oilers just be a single win. Make it be the start of something. It starts tonight. Go to Buffalo, get 2 points, and keep building on it and get the Kings back to being that team we saw earlier in the season and keep that momentum going after the coaching change and the All-Star break. For you everydayers, those of you that listen and watch Locked On LA Kings every day, coming up on Wednesday, obviously a full breakdown analysis of the Kings-Sabres game. And don't forget, on Friday, it's our usual fan feedback show. All your comments on what's going on with the LA Kings and more. And if you want to send an email for that show, the email address is lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. And if you're watching on YouTube, love for you to leave your comments in the comment section as well. And also stay interactive with the show 24/7 by following us on social media, X, Twitter, and Instagram. We are at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you, as always, for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. Hopefully we see a Kings win over the Sabres. And as always, go Kings go.